Good morning everyone, and my name is Deepika Bajaj, and I'm going to be talking about trust. But before that, I want to share a little bit about myself. I have grown up in India, and I came to the United States about 12 years ago. And my biggest lesson in trust was actually offered to me by my grandfather when I was 4 years old. And it goes back in time when he was a business owner in India. There was a time when he was invited to 2 weddings on one day. The first wedding was people who used to work for him in his factories, and the second wedding was of a diplomat who was getting married in the city council that day. And of course, by most standards, people thought that he's going to go to the city council wedding because most diplomats were going to be there. And he being the entrepreneur and the business person, he would like to show up in an environment where so many powerful people are going to show up. But that's not the case. He asked me to join him to come to the wedding of the worker who had invited him. And I asked him why. Why would you go to a wedding of your employee when you simply can have the choice of going to a diplomat's wedding? And he looked at me and said, one of the things that you need to understand is that when you build relationships, when you take a stand for yourself in your business, you're going to have a very, very empowered workforce. And for that, you're going to show up for them. And I believe that the way I show up for them, they'll show up for my customers. So in a sense, to take care of my family, for the bills that we pay, for you people to grow up and have a fuller life, I need to take care of their concerns. So I will go and attend the wedding of our workers. I was fascinated by that. Because for me, that was the first lesson in building relationships. Now, by the show of hands, tell me how many people know that trust is based on relationship? And by the show of hands, tell me how many of you actually felt that you had a scenario when your trust was betrayed? And now I want the truth. Earlier we heard about talking the truth. How many of you ever went back and restored that trust? That's where we're going to have this conversation. So obviously I was taking this flight to come to Charlotte at a weird hour like 6 a.m. So obviously I was checking in at 5 in the morning and you're on the airport and this gentleman sitting next to me starts to have a conversation with me. And he says, so where are you heading off to? I'm like, I'm off to Charlotte. And he's like, so what are you going to do there? I'm like, I'm having this fantastic conference and I'm going to be talking about trust. And then he started to respond to my inquiry and I said, so what do you understand of trust? He's like, it's a feeling. I know, I can trust my mother, I can trust my father, I can trust my sister. I'm like, really? And then I said, what if you found out today that you had brain cancer and you wanted neurosurgery? Would you trust your mother now? So what I want to, in fact, mention to you is that we need to understand trust and basically in the foundation of a relationship. Trust is based on a relationship and it's created in the relationship it establishes. So you would never trust your mother to go under the scissor with her on your brain. So it is definitely about thinking about trust in a different manner. We talk about, this is a great time in our life. We're talking about diversity. We're talking about the new voice of diversity. We are all contemplating what's going to shape the world in the next generation. And most of us agree that the conversation about affirmative action and the fairness is obsolete. We are now embarking on an era where we need to have a conversation, a very, very open dialogue where we are open to accepting other people's beliefs, their values. And in that conversation, we'll be able to find answers for any breakdowns that we're going through. Because in that conversation, new possibilities of action will emerge. That, in a sense, is innovation. And we know that innovation will save the day. I was talking to a large group of CEOs in Silicon Valley. That's where I live. And I was talking about this current situation of unemployment. We've seen that there are large gaps in employment. People are not finding jobs that they would like to pursue. Even if they do find jobs, So very experienced and accomplished professionals are finding themselves looking for jobs and not being able to get compensated to their liking. So what does that mean? I was talking to these CEOs and they said, we have been pushing the agenda of innovation for the longest time because we know for the next year we are not in shape to fill up all the employment gap. The Fortune 500 companies are not in shape to fill all the jobs that have been lost. They are absolutely clear that the next wave of jobs will come from entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs who are willing to innovate. So we at this level of time in our society have no choice but to give way for innovation. And that's only possible when we have trust and only possible when we have a conversation which creates new possibilities of action. Now you're looking at this picture and you're wondering, what happens in this situation? Trust is something like this. Trust is a relationship of reliance. In this relationship, all the trusted parties are required to keep up their word. They are supposed to perform the task as they committed to. They are accountable because in that lack of reliance, chances are that you will lose the sight of that you are actually taking the whole group down together. So trust is a relationship of reliance. Now I'm going to talk about the business imperative of trust. I know a whole lot of you understand trust, but there are ways we can measure trust. There are components of trust that show up in our life every single day. One of them is that when you have a high trust environment, your speed is high and your cost is low. I'm going to explain this with an example. Now most recently, I'm sure everybody knows of Warren Buffett. He's the CEO at Berkshire Hathaway. And he did a deal of $23 billion at a handshake. That meant that a similar deal was done outside of his presence would take multiple hundreds of lawyers, hundreds of bankers, hundreds of legal processes that would have to go through. But just because he was present, the deal was done at a handshake. What does that mean? His showing up as a trusted business professional accelerated the speed and reduced the cost. There was no overhead of employing all these bankers, the middlemen, and just getting the deal through. Agree? Let me tell you an example that I saw trust in action on a real life situation. So I traveled to New York. It's my favorite city in the world. I traveled to New York and I was doing a consulting assignment, and right in that building where I was working, there was this vendor who had a coffee and the donut shop right outside of that building. I'm sure you've all seen those vendors who have their small stalls outside buildings. His name was Jim. And early morning, because he was in the Midtown area, he would have a large line of people who wanted coffee. And what would happen is that he would serve them, but he would not be able to process the change. They would pay him, most of us carry $20, but then if coffee is $1.45, you're like just finding change. So he found that was actually frustrating for some of his customers because they would be in the line, they would keep waiting for the change would come through and they would leave. Essentially, that meant he was losing his revenue. After thinking a lot about it, I saw him that even the lunchtime, the morning time, lines were up and he was not able to serve all. One day I show up on his store and this guy has a bag of change in front of his store. And I'm looking at the change, I'm like, what's going on here? Then I see people actually paying him and taking the change from the bag and he's processing the line very quickly. And I went up and asked him, Jim, you put change in this bag right outside of your store, what's going on? He said, there's one thing that I was thinking about. I can't hire someone to process change for me because that would mean I'll have to pay his salary, which I don't